The rain battered against the windows of Havenwood Veterinary Clinic, each drop rattling the glass like a ticking clock. Inside, Dr. Anna Walker rubbed her weary eyes, exhaustion weighing heavily on her after a 14-hour shift. The fluorescent lights above hummed softly, casting a pale glow over the overcrowded kennels. She glanced at the clock. 11:27 p.m. Just a little longer, she whispered to herself, stacking patient files onto the front desk. The chime of the clinic's front door suddenly echoed through the quiet space. Anna turned, expecting a late-night emergency case. Instead, Officer Dean Parker, a local animal control officer, stepped in, his rain-soaked uniform clinging to his frame. In his arms was a bundled, shivering dog, wrapped tightly in a damp blanket. "I found him wandering near the highway," Dean said, carefully setting the bundle onto the examination table. "Nearly got himself run over." Anna pulled the blanket back, and her heart clenched. The dog, a cream-colored German Shepherd, was frail and visibly malnourished. His ribs protruded beneath his soaked fur, and his eyes were clouded over with cataracts, staring blankly into the distance. "Oh boy," she murmured, running gentle fingers along his bony spine. The dog didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned into her touch. "He's completely blind," Dean confirmed. "No microchip, no ID, just this." He handed Anna a worn leather collar, its cracked surface barely holding together. She traced her fingers over the faded letters embossed on it. A name, perhaps? A phone number? No, her breath hitched as she read the inscription. "If lost, return to Ravenswood Manor." "He saved me." A chill ran through Anna's spine. Who was this dog? Who had he saved? And why had he ended up abandoned on the side of the highway? Dean let out a sigh. "Look, Anna, the shelters are full, and given his age and condition." "I know," she finished, her stomach twisting at what he wasn't saying. "Euthanasia." Dean hesitated, his jaw tightening. "It's the only option." Anna looked at the dog, so fragile, yet still pressing his head into her palm, seeking warmth. Trusting her. He had no idea what they were deciding for him. Something about that collar nagged at her. Ravenswood Manor. The name was familiar, yet she couldn't quite place it. "I'll keep him overnight," she said finally. "I need to look into something." Dean frowned but nodded. "Your call, Doc." After he left, Anna settled the dog into a warm kennel, wrapping him in soft blankets. She crouched beside him, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the words on his collar again. "He saved me." What did that mean? She pulled out her phone and typed Ravenswood Manor into the search bar. The results loaded, and her heart dropped. An abandoned nursing home. Closed years ago. Her gaze drifted back to the blind dog, now curled up, his breathing slow and steady. Something about this wasn't right. And Anna Walker wasn't the type to walk away from a mystery. Anna barely slept. The words on the dog's collar haunted her. She sat at her desk, the dim glow of her laptop casting shadows across her tired face as she scrolled through old news articles. Ravenswood Manor, a once thriving nursing home for retired veterans, had been shut down years ago due to financial struggles and allegations of mismanagement. Residents had been relocated, staff had been dismissed, and the building had been left to decay. So why did this dog still wear its name around his neck? A soft whimper pulled her from her thoughts. She turned to see the blind shepherd, now named Max, shifting in his kennel. He was restless, his paws twitching as if caught in a dream. What had he been through? By morning, Anna had made up her mind. She called in a favor, rearranged her schedule, and packed Max into her car. The rain had cleared, leaving behind damp roads and mist clinging to the treetops. The closer she got to Ravenswood Manor, the more uneasy she felt. The GPS led her through winding back roads, past rusted fences and forgotten farmland. Then finally she saw it. The building stood at the end of a long driveway, its once grand architecture now crumbling under years of neglect. The front gate was slightly ajar, creaking as she pushed it open. Overgrown weeds had swallowed the pathway, and shattered windows gaped like empty eyes. Max whined softly, ears twitching. Anna hesitated, but curiosity pushed her forward. She knocked on the massive wooden doors, half expecting no answer. But after a moment, the door creaked open, revealing an elderly man in a wheelchair, his lined face shadowed by suspicion. His sharp blue eyes landed on Max and everything changed. "Max?" His voice cracked. His hands trembled against the armrests. Max's tail thumped once, twice, then a spark of recognition. The old dog lunged forward, whining, pressing his face against the man's lap, tail wagging frantically. The man's breath hitched. His weathered hands gripped Max's fur as if making sure he was real. "You came back," he whispered. Anna knelt beside them, heart racing. "You know this dog?" The man nodded, eyes glistening. "I do. He saved my life." The weight of the man's words settled between them. Anna watched as his trembling hands traced the dog's fur, his breath shaky, his lips pressed tight as if holding back a flood of emotions. Max, once frail and lifeless, was now alive with recognition, pressing himself closer, tail wagging with renewed energy. "I thought he was gone forever," the man whispered, his voice hoarse. Anna steadied herself. "What do you mean? He saved your life." The man exhaled slowly, his gaze distant. 3 years ago. It was the worst blizzard in decades. I was outside. Don't even remember how I got there. One moment I was in my room, the next I was on the ground, half buried in snow. Couldn't move. Thought it was the end. He swallowed hard. But he found me. Even in the storm, even blind as he was, he stayed with me. Kept me warm, barked until someone finally heard. If not for him. His voice cracked, but his grip on Max tightened. I wouldn't be here. Anna felt a chill crawl up her spine. She looked at the shepherd, now curled up at the man's feet as if he'd never left. This wasn't just any dog. This was a hero. The man wiped at his eyes, composing himself. "Henry Carter," he said finally, offering his hand. "I used to live here. Until everything fell apart." Anna shook it. "Dr. Anna Walker. I found Max on the highway. Thought he was abandoned." Henry's jaw tensed. "More like forgotten," he muttered. "Just like the rest of us." Anna frowned. "I read about this place. The closure, the financial troubles. What happened?" Henry's gaze darkened. Ravenswood was supposed to be a sanctuary for veterans. A place to live out our last years with dignity. But the man running it, Martin Holloway, he had other plans. The money dried up, staff left, the care got worse, and people disappeared. Some were sent to other homes. Others had nowhere to go. He shook his head. "I was one of the lucky ones. But not all of us made it." Anna's stomach twisted. "And Max?" Henry sighed. "I don't know. The day I was forced to leave, I begged them to let me take him. They refused. Said he was property of the facility." He glanced down at Max. Then he vanished. Just like everything else. Anna clenched her fists. "And now he's here. After all this time." Henry nodded. "Which means something's not right." Anna had felt it the moment she set foot on the property. An unease that seeped into her bones. Max hadn't just wandered back here by accident. He had returned for a reason. She took a breath. "Then let's find out what it is." Anna's mind raced as she absorbed Henry's words. The way he spoke about Ravenswood, once a haven, now a forgotten ruin, left a bitter taste in her mouth. She looked around, noticing how the building's grandeur had faded into decay. The silence was too thick, too unnatural. It wasn't just abandoned. It had been erased. But why? Max whined softly, his ears twitching, as if sensing the tension in the air. Henry ran a hand through the old shepherd's fur, his face set in a deep frown. "You said you found him on the highway?" Anna nodded. "Last night. Soaking wet, starving. If I hadn't picked him up." She didn't finish. Henry's jaw clenched. Someone left him there. The certainty in his voice made Anna's stomach twist. Why would someone do that? Henry didn't answer immediately. He stared at the crumbling walls of Ravenswood, as if they might whisper the truth to him. Finally, he spoke. "Because he remembers." Anna stiffened. "You think someone didn't want him coming back?" Henry met her gaze. "I think someone didn't want anyone asking questions." A shiver ran down Anna's spine. She pulled out her phone and typed in Martin Holloway, searching for anything that might explain what had happened after Ravenswood shut down. A few articles surfaced, mostly old reports about financial struggles, declining conditions. But one name kept appearing alongside his Valley Crest Development Corporation. "Do you know anything about Valley Crest?" she asked. Henry's expression darkened. "They bought the property a year ago. Claimed they were going to renovate it. Said it would be a modern assisted living community." His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Except nothing ever happened. No renovations. No announcements. Just silence." Anna frowned. "And Holloway?" "Vanished," Henry muttered. "Right after the deal went through. No one's seen him since." Anna's pulse quickened. This wasn't just about an old nursing home falling into disrepair. There was something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. She looked at Henry, then down at Max, who lay protectively at his feet. If the dog had been abandoned to keep him from returning here, then someone somewhere was still watching. A rustling noise from inside the building made Anna whip around. She wasn't alone. Anna's breath hitched as she scanned the darkened doorway of Ravenswood. The rustling sound had been faint, but undeniable. Max's ears perked, his body tensing, his blind eyes searching for something he couldn't see, but could certainly sense. Henry straightened in his wheelchair, his hands gripping the armrests. "We're not alone," he murmured. Anna took a slow step forward, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Hello?" No answer. Only silence, thick and suffocating. Then another noise. A sharp scrape, like metal against wood. Anna's instincts screamed at her to run, but she planted her feet. If someone was here, she needed to know why. Max let out a low, warning growl. Then, a shadow moved. A figure emerged from the dim hallway, a man, tall, broad-shouldered, his clothes dusted with debris as if he'd been rooting through the wreckage. His eyes flicked to Anna, then to Henry, and finally to Max. Something in his expression shifted recognition, maybe even guilt. He hesitated just long enough for Anna to take in the name tag pinned to his chest. Jake Marshall, Maintenance Supervisor. Anna's muscles unclenched just a fraction. "You work here?" she asked. The man exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Used to." His voice was rough, wary. "Still check in now and then." Henry scoffed. "Checking in? More like looting." Jake's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. He glanced at Max again. "Didn't think I'd see him again," he muttered. Anna crossed her arms. "You know this dog?" Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah. Everyone here did. He belonged to Henry, but he was more than just a pet. He kept people going when things got bad." He hesitated. When Holloway started pulling his disappearing act, Max was the only thing keeping some of the residents sane. Anna's stomach twisted. "What happened here, Jake?" The man let out a heavy sigh, glancing toward the ruined walls around them. It was never about taking care of people. Holloway was bleeding the place dry for years. When Valley Crest came in, they paid him off, promised they'd renovate, but it was all a lie. The plan was never to fix Ravenswood. He met her gaze. It was to erase it. A chill ran down Anna's spine. Erase it? Jake nodded grimly. No paper trail. No records. No proof that the money was stolen. Just a failed project no one would question. They kept it quiet, moved the residents out, made sure no one asked questions. And the ones who might have, well, they had a way of making them disappear. Henry's hands clenched. And what about Max? Jake hesitated. After you left, Holloway got rid of him. Or tried to. I don't know how he made it out, but if he's back here now. He exhaled sharply. Someone's going to notice. Anna's heart pounded. This wasn't just about an abandoned building or a dog who found his way home. This was a cover-up. And they had just blown it wide open. Anna felt the weight of Jake's words sink in. The air around them felt heavier, thick with the gravity of what they had uncovered. Ravenswood wasn't just abandoned. It had been silenced. And now, with Max back, the past was clawing its way to the surface. She exhaled, steadying herself. If Holloway and Valley Crest wanted this place erased, why hasn't anyone come back to finish the job? Jake rubbed his jaw. Because no one cared. They thought they'd buried it deep enough that it wouldn't matter. But if someone sees that dog here again, if word gets out that Ravenswood is still on people's minds, they'll come back. And this time, they won't leave loose ends. Anna's stomach turned. We need proof, she said. Something that connects Holloway to Valley Crest. Something that shows exactly what happened. Jake hesitated, then glanced over his shoulder, deeper into the ruined halls of Ravenswood. There might be something left, he admitted. Holloway kept records, real ones, hidden in his office. If they weren't destroyed, they'd be the only thing tying him to this place. Anna didn't need more convincing. Then let's find them. Jake led the way through the decayed building, stepping over broken floor tiles and fallen ceiling panels. The deeper they went, the stronger the scent of mildew and dust became. Max followed close, his blind eye searching the darkness, his paws silent against the warped linoleum. Henry wheeled behind them, his face set in determination. Holloway's office is on the east wing, Jake muttered, pushing open a door that groaned in protest. No one's been here in years. The office was a wreck, filing cabinets overturned, drawers yanked open, papers scattered like the aftermath of a storm. Anna's heart sank. Someone's already been through this. Jake nodded grimly. They were looking for the same thing we are. But as he scanned the room, his eyes landed on an old metal safe, half hidden behind a collapsed bookshelf. His expression darkened. That wasn't open before. Anna's pulse quickened. If the safe had been locked all this time, there was still a chance. She crouched beside it, tracing the rusted edges, fingers brushing over the dented lock. Can you open it? Jake exhaled, rolling up his sleeves. I can try. Jake's fingers worked quickly, twisting the rusted dial, his jaw clenched in concentration. The safe was old, but not invincible. Anna held her breath as she watched, her ears straining for any sound beyond their own movements. The last thing they needed was company. Max stood alert beside her, his body tense. Henry tapped his fingers against his wheelchair armrest, his eyes never leaving the door. A sharp click broke the silence. Jake exhaled, pulling the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a stack of folders, bound in cracked leather, and a flash drive tucked between them. Anna's hands trembled slightly as she reached in, lifting the files one by one. Dust scattered into the air as she flipped through the pages. Bank transfers, emails, contracts between Holloway and Valley Crest Clear. Undeniable proof that the nursing home had been deliberately shut down for profit. Henry let out a breath. You were right. They never planned to fix this place. Anna nodded, her mind already racing. If we take this to the authorities, Holloway's done. Valley Crest too. Jake's expression was unreadable. "If we make it that far." Before Anna could respond, a loud bang echoed through the halls. Footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. Someone was here. Jake swore under his breath. "They found us." Anna's heart pounded as she shoved the files into her bag. Henry gripped the wheels of his chair, his face set in a grimace. Max let out a low growl, his body coiled like a spring. Shadows moved outside the broken window, then the sound of voices. "We need to move," Jake whispered. Anna barely nodded before the door burst open. The door slammed open with a force that rattled the rotting wood, sending dust swirling into the stale air. Anna barely had time to react before two men stormed in, their boots echoing against the warped floor. One was broad-shouldered with a scar running down his cheek, his sharp eyes locking onto Jake with recognition. The other was leaner, but no less intimidating, his fingers twitching at his belt armed. Jake moved first. He grabbed a rusted metal chair and shoved it forward, knocking the scarred man off balance. "Run!" he barked. Anna didn't hesitate. Clutching the bag tight against her chest, she spun toward the back door just as Henry wheeled himself around. Max lunged forward, snarling, his presence enough to make the armed man hesitate. That second of hesitation was all they needed. Jake threw his weight against the door, splintering the frame, and they burst into the hallway. Anna's pulse thundered in her ears as they bolted through the abandoned corridors. The dim emergency lights flickered, casting long shifting shadows as the sound of pursuit grew louder behind them. Henry gritted his teeth, his arms straining as he propelled himself forward, his wheels skidding slightly against the dust-covered tiles. A gunshot rang out. The bullet embedded itself into the wall inches from Anna's shoulder, sending shards of plaster raining down. She ducked instinctively, her breath hitching. Jake cursed under his breath. "They're serious," he growled. "We need to lose them." Max barked a sharp, commanding sound before darting ahead, his body moving with surprising precision despite his blindness. He knew this place. Anna didn't question it. "Follow Max," she shouted. Left behind. Right after an accident, the pregnant dog desperately searches for help. Anna followed without thinking. The room was small, filled with old storage crates, but there, a second exit, leading outside. Jake yanked the door open, revealing the overgrown back courtyard. They stumbled out just as their pursuers crashed into the storage room behind them. "Keep going," Jake urged. They ran. Through the knee-high grass, past broken benches and rusted lampposts, until the gravel driveway came into view. Anna's car sat where she left it, the engine still warm from their arrival. She didn't stop running until she reached the door, yanking it open as Henry maneuvered himself into the passenger seat. Jake jumped into the back, slamming the door shut as Max scrambled inside beside him. The second Anna turned the key, the tires screeched against the pavement. The men burst through the trees just as she sped onto the road, their shouts lost in the roar of the engine. They didn't stop until the city lights came into view. Only then did Anna loosen her grip on the wheel, her knuckles stiff from how tightly she had been holding on. Her chest heaved, adrenaline still thrumming in her veins. Beside her, Henry exhaled shakily, his head leaning back against the seat. Jake rubbed a hand over his face. "Well," he muttered, "that could have gone worse." Anna let out a breathless laugh, equal parts relief and disbelief. "We have the proof," she said, tapping her bag. "They can't cover this up anymore." Henry looked down at Max, who rested his head against his lap, his tail thumping softly. "He saved us again," the old man murmured. Anna met his gaze. "He always does." In the days that followed, the evidence they uncovered tore through the city like wildfire. The media picked up the story, exposing Holloway's corruption and the fraudulent dealings of Valley Crest. Investigations were launched, arrests were made, And finally, Ravenswood Manor was given a second chance. Volunteers and former staff returned, helping to clean and restore the once forgotten home. Henry moved back in, along with several others who had once called it home. The halls no longer echoed with emptiness, but with laughter, conversation, and life. And Max, the blind, forgotten dog who had saved them all, became the heart of Ravenswood once again.